Today is the time is impromptu, impromptu. So right now I'm talking to myself until people will show up because I haven't notified anyone that I'm coming. Unfortunately, today was one of these days. So now, if you're just watching this after the fact, then I'm filling in the silence. And anybody who jumps on, how are you? Welcome, welcome. All right. We'll slowly let people come in. I feel like a yoga instructor or something. You can also open a stage on Discord. Beautiful. Stage is open. Anybody who's here, how are you? Say hello. Welcome to Simulation Talk 299. One more to 300. Surreal. What's up, Guru? Good to see you. I know today's a surprise. How are you doing tonight? What's up, Joshua? Good to see you. People are coming in quick. What up, Miller? Good time for a Walkman. Never Tools is on Discord. Joey's on Discord. If you guys want to come on and chat, just raise your hand and I'll bring you up. Just a reminder for everyone. What's up, Joey? Oh, let me do this because I wanted to do this all day and I kept on forgetting. There you go. The important thing is out. What up, Dallas? Thank you so much for joining from Twitch, which is a good reminder if you guys want to help the Twitch channel grow, come and join Twitch on LaserX83 on Twitch. LaserX83 on Twitch. I feel like we're really getting somewhere up there. Working night shift. You got it, Guru. Wait, night shift? What supermarket has a night shift? Or is just like in the evening, you mean? Thank you so much, Guru. Appreciate you. Dark Snipper. Not Sniper, Snipper. I like it. Okay. Thank you, Guru, for mentioning on the channel, of course. Per usual. Turtle, great art. I appreciate the art. Looks great. Mr. Saiyan, how are you? Okay. So slowly people are flowing in on both YouTube and Discord, and of course X and Twitch as well. Again, if you guys want to join on Twitch, it's LaserX83 on Twitch. Let's start. Let's get into some questions. Dallas Technologies joining from Twitch, much appreciated. My supermarket, we fill up this aisle overnight. Nobody at the store. Oh, okay. That makes sense. I like those quiet hours. Dingo. On vacation in Spain. Finally awake late enough to catch your stream. Have the best day. We're in Spain, by the way. South or more like Barcelona or Madrid? We're in Spain. Mr. Saying jump on, jumped off. Again, anybody who wants to chat, just raise your hand on Discord and I'll bring you up, no problem. And if not, then I'll just wait for a few more people to come up with some questions. And then we can slowly start. Southeast. Next, Alicante. I don't know how to pronounce it. Well, thank you for letting us know. It's pretty hot right now, huh? Spain is great. Okay, let's see if there's some topics we can tackle today. Wow, Michael Levine has been added again. Well, with some new things, which is fun. Wow. So much is going on, guys. Toasty 36 degrees. That's Celsius, I'm assuming. Been trying to tempt the in-laws with the spirit molecule. Not yet, but they'll come around to it. They always do. Peace, man. That's amazing. I mean, not a lot of people go down that path. I definitely went down that path, and I'm glad I did. All the power to you, man. It's very encouraging. I think everybody should at least consider doing it at one time in their lives. So yeah, these, as you know, these lives are technically for, answering people's questions and engaging unless people come on and then we chat. But let's see if we can maybe find a topic to freestyle around. Are there particular topics that you guys would like to? Oh, I can do this. I didn't know. That's very useful to know. Let me know if there's any particular topics that you want to raise that we can just talk about. Guru got his tea per usual. Today is Ginseng 5. Ginseng 5 treasure tea. Incredible. You definitely have the coziest texts about it for sure. Okay, so what can we chat about? Yesterday we were touching. What were we talking about yesterday? I need like refreshers from the day before now. Yesterday we were talking about just ideologies, memes, woke, all that good stuff, which is topics we sometimes touch on, but rarely. My favorite topic is philosophy, but we don't really get to talk too much about philosophy, do we? Maybe we can ponder some philosophical things today if people are into it. Not sure what it might be, but we can definitely think about what it might be. Maybe the role of philosophy. Because I feel like the role of philosophy is not very clearly understood. Especially because a lot of scientists kind of reject the idea that philosophy is anything else to contribute anymore. More philosophy is good. I would agree with that, Miller. Some of these conversations were happening recently also on Kurt Jaimungal's podcast, on the Toe podcast, about the importance of philosophy in science. I think to me it's clear that the reason that philosophy is important is because it is the science of thought itself. And if you don't look closely at how you think about things methodically, undoubtedly, it's almost like if the machinery you use to make progress in science is reasoning and thinking, which is the machine you're using. If you don't never do maintenance to the machine, you don't inspect the machine, you don't study the machine, you don't understand how the machine itself works, you will undoubtedly drift into all kinds of nonsensical propositions because the mind is really good at making up stories. That's what it does. But not all stories map onto reality equally well. So I see philosophy basically as the maintenance science of thinking itself, or the science of thinking itself, as I said. And I think that's really the core of why philosophy is so important. For example, Neil deGrasse Tyson is known to make pretty disparaging sounds in the direction of philosophy. He's not alone. Lawrence Krauss has been making similar noises over the years. And that's because I think there's a slight delusion in especially in physicists' minds, because their perception is that, well, what do you think that physicists are not equipped to reason around the data that they themselves study? No, they're of course the most well equipped to do that. But if they don't put enough attention on investigating their own machinery, and not just in the way that it exists, but in the way that it evolves, then they will simply miss a whole giant chunk of sometimes avenues traveled that are just a waste of time because it's just the wrong way to approach this. And we can look at specific examples. I think scientism is a real problem. I think it is. I think this perception that science, the way it exists today, is the only way to discern what in fact is real about the world, is a problematic proposition. I am actually in the camp that thinks that science will always be the best way to come at the world. It's just, that's why I said, people sometimes say something like along the lines of, science is not the only way to know what's real. So I think it's just a matter of definition, of course, but to me, no, science is and always will be the best way to understand what actually is real. It's just that you can say that it doesn't necessarily mean science in its current form. So yes, science is the only way to know this. It's just that we have to expand what we mean by science, which is just an investigation of what in fact reality is in all its forms through all possible modalities. Science should not be restricted or limited by just the current tools, which is the idea that the only things that you can probe with a device is the only thing is worth talking about, because we are also data collecting devices. So investigating exactly how we are, what we are, should squarely fall within the parameters of what science is doing. And I guess neuroscience does that, but I think giving more credence to what people are experiencing, I think is very important for the development of science. What's up, Sienna? And it's easy to understand how people get stuck in attitudes. So, for example, I think that the reason that Neil deGrasse Tyson is so adamant about some of these positions is not because, you know, what the easy way out would be. Oh, he's just being an a-hole and all that stuff. It's like no. He thinks he's doing something brave. He thinks that he is actually standing up to foolishness, which I can't even say I'm pretty much in the same camp. Like, I would like to stand up to foolishness because it's a form of mental laziness that the more of it we allow, the more we drift away from progress. But I think what he fails to recognize is that when you are just when you realize, so like the justifiable part, I guess, is that there is a lot of foolishness and people very often are confused and expressing their confusion very strident and convinced forms. So they're like very convinced of what they're saying, but in reality, they don't have the first clue about what they're talking about. And again, it's not even a malicious thing. People just talk, right? They don't realize what is the standard that is being used in science. So they swap it with something else, which is the illusion of authority, which is not what it is. But then what happens is that many scientists kind of get sick of this, and they sick constantly responding to a lot of foolishness, and eventually they succumb to the attitude. That's what I mean by getting stuck in the attitude. And I think that's what happens to people like Neil deGrasse Tyson. They get stuck in the attitude against, and this is why and then they just become a one-trick pony. Like every single proposition coming from the outside, first of all, it's automatically no, it's already nonsense, it's already this. And then now you're married to the proposition, so now you run with it. And that, of course, is problematic because it's dogmatic in its core, because you're playing one note no matter what happens. And you really don't try and stop and assess every single situation. And to some degree, it's an energy preserving mechanism, because statistically, it's more likely the case that people are confused than they're actually onto something without utilizing modern scientific tools. But it can also lead you astray. So there has to be middle ground that is struck somehow between these attitudes. Dingo is saying, do you believe that we will ever get to the point where science can measure what we're looking for, the meaning of life, etc.? Every day there seems to be a news article about something changing. So I'm trying to connect the second part of your sentence to the first part. I can try and guess what you meant by that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start answering the first part, and then you can maybe help me by clarifying the second part. And if you won't respond by the time I get to the end of the answer to the first part, then I can just wing it and see if I can guess what you meant by the second part. So you said, do you believe that we will ever get to the point where science can measure what we are looking for, the meaning of life, etc., etc.? So it's a very good question. I think that it's not that kind of a thing. So the way that I see science, capital S science, I've said this before, it is the enterprise of, in our case, human understanding. Or, more universally, it is the enterprise of understanding. Full stop. What is very often being conflated by modern scientists is that what they think is going on is that science is only the very narrow band of kinds of questions you can ask, to which the answer can be delivered by probing something with a device or coming to a very large consensus statistically about something, like very accurate usage of tools. And that's the only way to discern what in fact is going on in reality. That's an understandable position, but a mature science, a science that it truly opens itself to universal potential, should be one that doesn't limit itself to only what it can currently probe. It should constantly be able to postulate and interact with ideas that lead to potential progress later. So, for example, in the case of cognition, we know that we have it. Do we know the origin of it? No. Do we know that it's fundamental, or is it arising as something that happens inside of a substrate or on top of a substrate? We also don't know. So, but is this question relevant to current attempts at coming in the world? I think that we're getting to a stage where it is becoming a relevant question to ask, and the answer to which is no longer arbitrary. It used to be that certain questions were only interesting in their most philosophical form, but they wouldn't necessarily translate to anything, day to day-ly. Now, I think we are entering a stage where a lot of these questions become very relevant, simply because the answering the question, where does consciousness comes from, can make or break a big ethical decision we have to make around how we treat what seems to be arising minds and machines, right? AIs. Now, as I'm sure you know, both me existing somewhere in the spectrum of this conversation, and as many people online close and far from the subject matter are talking about, is that we don't really understand what it means to have any other type of cognition than our own. So for example, I can say that the healthiest way of treating this situation is that acting out of the assumption that it's possible that there's some cognition there, even if we think that there's no reason for it to be, because it puts us on a safe zone where even if it's just a dud and there isn't, well, no harm done. But at least we kind of checking the box that if there is some cognition, we're treating it with the best way that we can, right? That being said, there is this danger there to lose track of the fact that this is just a way of seeing it, a heuristic, and start believing the actual proposition that in which we know there's consciousness there, which we don't. And then you might start actually doing damage by allocating funds towards mitigating risk and or averting some pain in these, postulated minds. And if in reality there is no mind there is no cognition there, then you're just wasting resources, when in reality it could go towards benefiting and bettering the experience of other things that are actually conscious. So there's definitely a real need to answer this question. So to bring it back full circle to the core of your question, do I think science will ever discern what we actually would? It depends. So a mature science would also be able to include an understanding of what is true about what humans are, how they operate, how consciousness arises, and maybe even investigate what role does the search for meaning and the spiritual pursuit actually plays in the trajectory and the evolution of every organism. These kinds of questions, which are somewhat a fusion between science and philosophy, can actually lead to very fruitful attitudes and conversations in the world. So in that regard, I do think that a mature science would include the science of the internal. And I always say that meditation, for example, is the science of the inner world, because the definition of science is observing something closely and noticing regularities in the behavior of that thing, and then seeing if you can replicate the results, which is exactly what meditation is. You are observing your inner world closely. You're noticing what is true about the usage of your attention and its connection to your well-being. Then you practice in order to replicate certain kinds of states of being, states of mind, that can actually bring you closer to a more unified, coherent, and well-resonated state. So there is some harmonious state. And this is replicable, across individuals. So I would call it a science. But just the fact that you can't measure exactly how much well-being somebody's feeling in any given moment doesn't render it meaningless. There's always these open questions about the exact quantity of something. It does not mean that there's no real answers to be answered in that space. So in that regard, yes, it's just that we have to infuse the understanding that science should also be whatever it is that we're investigating, no matter what the modality we're using. One modality is to measure spin, momentum, movement through space. Another modality is noticing closely what in fact is going on in every given moment without giving it a definition, and then seeing what happens from there. The second part of the question, I see you like GWST. The second part of the question, you connected to JW satellite. Every day there seems to be news article about something changing. Sure, but but how are you connecting it to meaning and the search of meaning? Like the answer wouldn't be in new information. It'll be in the kinds of attitudes we should endorse and subscribe to in order to be a better version of ourselves, so we have a more fulfilling life. What's up, my Brighton and Yoni? Absolutely, I'm glad you like it. So yeah, so I would say that would be a yes for me. It's just that we have to make science more than, or allow science to be more than what it is currently. And I've asked this question, Lev Levitin, we have a couple of interviews with on this channel. You can look it up. Lev Levitin wrote seminal papers in computational science, and he was, a very prolific scientist his whole life. He's now in his 90s. I went to Boston to meet with him, and I asked him this very poignant question, which is, why is it that we are only talking about the things that we can, the only things we consider seriously are the ones that kind of fall within this very narrow band of what we call science currently? And he said, I understand what you're asking, and actually it's a much deeper question than you even realize. But the answer to it is very simple and very disappointing. Funding. The answer is funding. That's it. We do this because the people who are driving the ships, or the ship of science as a whole, if you want to make that metaphor, instead of many different branches of science being the ships, what is steering the ship is still the ability to keep the ship afloat. And somebody has to pay the bills of the people involved. And in order to do that, the people who are putting the money down have certain interests of things coming to fruition, not just the glory of the investigation itself, which to some degree it has validity, of course, because in the end of the day, things have to be paid for. So the things that are usually easier paid for are the ones that you can kind of show a horizon of possibility of it coming to fruition in some way for whomever put the money down. This is why this is the thing that we kind of identifying as the important thing. But if we could figure out a system in which you can have infinite abundance and really nobody closes the tap, so to speak, the economics would look very different and the incentives would be aligned and remapped in a completely different configuration. That, I think, is a future that is worth having. But I think in order to get there, we first have to get some things straight about ourselves, which kind of leads me to some of the stuff that we were talking about yesterday. And that has to do with, what's up, Elusa? Good to see you. And that has to do with how we interact with ourselves, our own identity, both individually and also how it translates to then what we do collectively. Because we will still have different goals as human beings, but there's a certain complementary attitude as a whole, an underlying attitude towards everything that is complementing progress in all its domains, and other attitudes that hamper it. So you might be interested in different directions of investigation in life. And when I say investigation, I'm saying it very loosely, so it can also be artistic investigation. That's what I mean by that. Just like, what channel are you exploring as a whole? So aside from the fact that all people are interested in all kinds of things, underneath it, there has to be some kind of a attitude that is like a unspoken written contract between all the human beings, which is that we're acting out of good faith. We are trying to do our best to put our best foot forward in whatever domain we're investigating. And we want what we do to not just support our domain, but we understand that we want there to be a surplus from what we do to help all other domains evolve. And then humanity as a whole, as an organism, as one, can actually decide to take enormous, directional changes depending on what the situation in front of them requires. And currently, there's too much fragmentation to do that. So in order to make, this is what my show, the perfect moment to plug my show 0 to 1 with Danny Goller, that is on Spotify. And I'm going to be putting episodes here as well, but it's mostly on Spotify. That's what it's about. It's how do we take what we are currently, because my whole point is that everything we need to become an interstellar civilization, we already have. We have it. We can do it. The only thing that is missing is incentives. And what's behind that is what drives us, what gives us the sense of meaning, just like you said. So if we find meaning only locally, all our plans and goals will always be around that. And you will never really, it's a choice to look up. It's a choice to look out. It's a choice to aim there versus only here. Given here, focusing on here will also get you there. But without ever aiming there, you'll never go there. That's just not how it works. So that's a choice that has to be made. And that choice cannot be done by trying to convince people. It has to come from a real, authentic place of yearning towards it. That is something that has to be inculcated in humans again. We used to have it. This romanticism towards the exploration has to be embedded in humans from a young age, and then you let them explore. The fact that we can reach new horizons, not just in terms of space, but also in terms of inner understanding and all of these things. So I do think that what is happening now is some form of that, in which we kind of go into ourselves in order to blossom out. So we making sure that the roots are stronger so we can reach out. I think it's already happening. But there are things that we can do: encourage certain conversations, employ certain attitudes in the presence of one another that are more fascinating, interesting, inspiring, that will help all of us to want these things to happen. And then it's actually worth going and doing all the things that we want to be doing. Let me see if I can address a couple of things if there's something here to address. My Brighton is saying there needs to be scientifically recognized structure of psychonauts. They can't all be wrong. Well, it's already happening. I don't know if you're aware or not, that it's already happening. The MTX is exactly what this program is. I hear that trying to be our best selves and collective shifts in consciousness. Yes. Don't you think, Ciela is saying, don't you think hierarchy, dynamic, and struggle to survive will sabotage good faith? That's a really deep question. So let's read it again. Don't you think hierarchy dynamics and the struggle to survive will sabotage good faith? I would say that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So if we're still stuck in the level where we're constantly trying to survive, there is no way that we'll be able to get to a place where it's comfortable enough to reach out towards the stars. But I think this is the thing. I think that we've already reached the highest level you can reach in terms of comfort. It's what is missing is the attitude of appreciation of what we have. This is what I keep trying to reiterate again and again, is that, and for some people it might be very difficult to see because they're too entrenched in this other perception, but if you've convinced yourself that everything is awful, when in reality everything is the most amazing it has ever been in the history of Earth, then there's a different kind of problem. It's not of resources. It's one of states of mind and attitudes. And it's only when you start feeling grateful for what you have, you start sharing and distributing it, because you're opening the gate of surplus in your awareness. Until that moment, if you believe that everything is awful, even if it isn't, just the attitude alone, in order to stay consistent, will prevent you from ever opening to surplus, therefore giving, because you constantly think that there's not enough. Because if everything is awful, of course there's not enough of anything, right? But if you allow yourself to see that things are incredible, then it becomes very easy to just share and want others to win versus constantly competing with others. And then the attitude changes from competition to collaboration. We can derive meaning just as easily from the sense of collaboration, which feels very harmonious, and move away from the competition. They both are good drivers, by the way, just to be clear. They're different strategies. So if you think about what actually drives each organism moment to moment, is feelings in the body. It's sensations, as in Vipassana, they're called sensations. And that includes emotions. So the emotions is just another feeling in the body, right? Emotions are just a feeling in the body we give names to, because we recognize them, because we experience them a lot. So we talk about them culturally, and therefore we give them names. But they're just a feeling in your body, just like everything else. The only way you know that anything is happening is by having a sensation in the body. That's what, by the way, you're paying attention to when you're actually doing a Vipassana retreat all day. You do this 11 hours a day. You just pay attention to the to the sensations in the body without naming them, without branding them, without judging them, just kind of observing them and then feeling through them. So, what drives every physical action you take is a sensation in the body that has a drive. Meaning, the way I'm using the word, is kind of the fuel. It is the instance of burning the fuel of feeling into a drive forward. And that's what I call meaning. So the reason we live on meaning. So all the other things that we do physically, eat, have sex, whatever it is that we do, like to get a quote unquote good feeling in the body, they're attempts at generating fuel. That is this. It's not about the food. It's about the meaning you feel when you eat the food. When it feels good, like this enjoyment, that's meaning. It's meaningful, right? It's also why it can be equivalently motivating to meet with someone you are in love with, because it's deep sense of meaning. When you're with that person, there's meaning. There's a whole thing happening. There's the story you're telling yourself about the situation, but it's also the physical feeling of being in that state, right? That's the thing that drives you. You would drive anywhere. You would spend as much money as you need. It will drive you to do things. So just to be clear what I mean by the word meaning. So, because ultimately it's all about meaning for us, or however we derive meaning out of, whatever we derive meaning out of, you can derive meaning out of different kinds of interactions with the world. Currently, it is very meaningful to compete and then win or lose. By the way, it's also meaningful. It's just a negative slant on the meaning, but it's meaningful. It's an impactful moment, which might drive you to be better, or might, do the opposite and make you quit. But this is how we were playing the game until now. And by definition, because it's the game we, agreed to play, it leads to a model that is expressing itself in everything we do, in the economical format and everything else. It's about winning. And again, vilifying it doesn't make any sense, because it's the strategy we so far used to get to where we are. You can say, look, there's a lot of problems. Yeah, that's a given. You will never get to a situation where there's no problems. That doesn't exist. Okay, that's a Santa Claus belief. Problems are the norm, which is just situation you didn't expect and don't favor, right? That's just how it's always going to be. What you can hope for is better problems, higher level problems that both are interesting to solve and also are not the kind of problems that can decide between life or death. And we already got to a pretty high level of this, right? We got out of the food chain. We don't really have to worry about predators. This is enormous progress. People don't even, realize how crazy that is. It didn't used to be the case. You still had to worry about animals and things like this. Now, basically, doesn't exist. Statistically, technically, it doesn't exist anymore. It happens here and there, but it's completely negligible. So, but can we also derive the same amount of drive from feeling good about collaborating and making it happen together? That requires a reformulation of the software in our own brains. So if every individual is wired to derive meaning out of competing because it's a particular dopamine spike, that network is not as well positioned to work to derive meaning, making fuel out of collaboration. It's almost like the wrong engine. This works on diesel. This one works on hydrogen or something, right? It's a different engine. And you can't run a diesel engine on hydrogen. You can't. It doesn't know how to do that. The wiring in your brain in this case is the engine. So you have to change the engine. You have to actually change the what you want to derive meaning out of. Because if you're competitive, you go into a situation in which you are invited to collaborate on something, invariably, because that's what your brain is now doing, that's the engine, you will always find ways. Yes, you'll be collaborating, but within the collaboration, you're constantly looking for but how am I winning though? Am I above everybody else in the group or things like this? It's like, and that can work for a little while, but it's almost like eventually the engine is going to get clunky and go, and it's just not going to work anymore, because you'll be colliding with too many people. The harmony is broken. The engine that we're talking about, collaboration, by definition, requires mostly outwards looking vectors versus just internally consistent. So we're expanding the horizon of where we define our boundary. So we have to change our personal engine so we can work in this more collective engine. That's the reformulation that needs to happen. What's interesting, and this is the part that is always being missed, then in the process of trying to change the engine, people constantly smuggle in functions from the old engine to the new engine. So it starts from, well, I'm going to go on my spiritual quest, right? And then when you start kind of like rising in the evolution of this, and let's say more people start paying attention to you, invariably the old engine will kick back in, and then you get what we now recognize as spiritual one-upsmanship. Like when people are trying to constantly be more spiritual than the other, it's like, well, no, how many ayahuasca ceremonies did you do? Oh, I did 500. That's the old engine. Like this should not even be a conversation point for you, not even inside. But if it is, here's an opportunity to look and change something, right? And it's work. It's hard work. But this is why you always hear me, the people here who are long listeners, you would always recognize this attitude in me in which I'm very, very sensitive to this part where people in the spiritual world constantly throw shade or downplay or talk shit about science. And it's like, it's just the wrong attitude. That's the old engine again. Bringing it back in. There should be no judgment. There should be, and actually the opposite of this, there needs to be a recognition and there has to be a gratefulness for the kind of world science gave us so we can now postulate these greater opportunities. The reason I can sound so good with this mic and be streaming this in high resolution to make people to see is thanks to science. None of this could happen without science. So we should absolutely acknowledge this and now say, okay, science, thank you so much. Let's pay you back by painting you with brighter and more beautiful colors that we're now going to bring from the inside. We're not competing. We're not destroying. We're not anti-establishment. We're not anything. We are now going to bring the fruits of the labor of science to fruition by blossoming as the fruit at the end of that branch. That's the attitude and the perception that needs to be at the core of this project. I'm going to go through some of your comments. By the way, if you guys want to follow on Twitch and help the channel, you'll be LaserX83 on Twitch. LaserX83 on Twitch. We'll be very grateful if you guys show up on there. Yoni saying it's a knowing thing for him. It's not bad for me, but I see competition between countries over becoming the dominant world power. So this is the external, right? It's always very easy to say things about other things, about other countries, about other people. It's very easy. And also, these are meaningless statements because it's the way the system works, right, currently. And we should be grateful for the kind of world it gave us, despite the fact that it also produced other things that are not great. But it does not mean that the fruits of its labor are meaningless and terrible. It's not. And this perception is actually much more of a problem than anything the countries do. So saying a country is this or that is a meaningless statement, not because it is on the face of it with the words that it expresses, but because it's too blunt of an object to describe something of meaning. What does that mean? Like, what is a country? You mean the leadership of the country? Okay. Do you know enough about the exact constituents of the population in that country and what is the general temperature of what they actually want or doesn't want to happen? Do you understand? Did you live amongst them to understand their psychology, their predispositions? No one can ever do that. It doesn't mean we can't make general statements, but please know that these statements usually don't reflect anything that is even closely related to what we call reality. And you're saying you would dislike a global government. Well, here's a proposition for you. Currently, the way that it goes, it depends on how you distribute power. But if you have enough people in government that are not, as driven by power and competition, but are driven genuinely by the collaboration because that's how they grew up, the government ceases being this thing that you distrust because it's filled with people that are trustworthy by definition. That's who they are. That's the system. That's the engine they're running on. So the chances of still being bad apples is always there. But as a whole, as a system, it's going to be a completely different thing that you can easily trust, right? And then actually, a world government is on a certain level of key decisions for Earth. You would have to have that. You would have to have an Earth's consensus to do something, right? The second we have other planets, you can't not have that. Now, how do you arrange this? What does that mean? Does it have an actual jurisdiction over decisions within the Earth? Maybe not. Maybe the way that you separate these things is you say it only has jurisdiction for key decisions that have to do with interplanetary endeavors. That's it. And then all the countries can vote, and they're kind of like the people, But you can find a way to do this. It's just a lot more complex. And there will have to be a way to do this. The point is that vilifying and pointing fingers, again, it's the difference between this. Every time you catch yourself doing this, anybody, ask yourself, what are you failing to point in yourself? Like that not even in terms of, is it the same thing? I'm not even subscribing to that. It's like, oh, you're identifying it in others, therefore it's the strongest thing in you. I don't believe that for 1 second. You can easily describe a situation in which somebody is annoying you for reasons that you don't have these qualities, but it's just annoying you. However, there is something there that it's why it's annoying you, right? That might point to something else inside of you. But that is very important to observe, because every instance that we're pointing the finger outwards without the ability to make any difference about it, it's a wasted opportunity, because it's a wasted moment of existence in which you could look inwards and actually better something about yourself, unrelated at all to the subject matter that you just pointed to. It's just a wasted moment. That's all. How should someone work their way out of a dead end job? That's a great question. So it's a very difficult question because it requires sacrifice. It requires a belief in something greater, and it requires the faith that if you've never been there, right? If you already ran through the program that you allowed yourself to live there, it's much easier to see what works and what doesn't work because you tried it. So your body knows. The second you experience something on your own flesh, so to speak, you know it to be true in ways that you can't if somebody's telling you to do so, right? It doesn't help somebody who's like a teenager who's a really big go-getter, and they're trying to do something huge, and then it's not going to help that a millionaire or a billionaire, even one that they really respect, is going to come and tell them, hey kid, trust me, I've achieved everything, and that's not where happiness is. Believe me, you don't want to chase money, you don't want to chase this. That's not going to help, because the kid doesn't know it in their bodies. They don't know that. They don't know that here, right? They might even believe what they're saying, but there's not enough of an impact, because again, what moves you is the body. What moves you is the sensations in the body. So in order to believe that, the kid has no other choice but to go and try and get everything. And even if they succeed, then when they get to that level, also, by the way, it's very easy to say, I tried and it's not where happiness is, because one thing about your want was fulfilled, which is getting there. What you then discover is that fulfillment is not enough to fulfill you. And then it starts your search actually beyond that. But if the kid is lucky, he's going to encounter some hardship of another flavor that's going to shorten the path. They won't need to go through the 30 years to achieve whatever it is and then only then discover it was empty. Maybe there's going to be a better way to do this, right? Maybe there's ways that we can actually do it systematically in school because we would understand the mechanisms behind it. All these things should be on the table. But to the point of how do you get out of a dead-end job? Well, it depends on the person. Some people, they can take a very radical step and just kind of throw everything in the air and just, burn the boats. That's one strategy that can absolutely work. And if it can work, it will also work the fastest. Because when you truly burn the boats, your mind is going to get on it. Like you're going to, I kind of did something similar where I just kind of threw everything I had. And then I decided, you know what? I'm not going to ever do another thing I don't really want to do. Even if it means that I have to end up on the streets or whatever it means, it doesn't matter. I was willing to sacrifice everything, right? And this does not mean that it would work for everyone. Also, it does not mean that it would work for everyone in every stage of life. You can't just do that when you have kids, right? So there's also a completely different strategy, but it's easily as effective if you apply it properly, which is that constantly allowing some space during the day, opening a little bit more space for attempts at that other thing that you potentially want to do. It doesn't mean that you have to know what is this other thing, but you have to consciously open, let's say, an hour of your day and then 2 hours of your day, usually not more than that if you keep a full-time job and you have a life. But you can get to 2 extra hours, because I promise you we waste a lot more time than we realized by doing nothing, just staring at the wall here and there. So if you can get on that, you allocate that 1 hour, those 2 hours, and you just, in the beginning, you literally just meander around, just exploring what is it that you might be interested in. Because the fastest way to get out of a dead end job is to tether yourself, to connect to something that will pull you there. That requires vision, that requires clarity, it requires allowing yourself to be in a state of exploration and wonder, which usually dead end jobs kill, because what they convince you of is like, that's all there is. It's just, you get up, come on, you got to get real. You got to get real. You know, that whole, that kind of mantra of like, you got to get real, man. You got to get real. You can expand what you think is real, right? So it's absolutely doable to allocate that 1 hour and then just allow yourself, without any pressure, to just even go on like long YouTube explorations, but about things that actually make this other spark in you happen from when you were a kid, whatever it is. And then just let it be there. Like every day, every single day, allow yourself for that 1 hour instead of doom scrolling. Give yourself that 1 hour where you just do that. You'll be surprised what would happen within a week. Your being and your mind are pretty good at creating inner paths towards desired futures. If you allow it to form that goal, it will automatically start moving things around to make that happen. And it won't happen overnight, but it will start happening. And when these opportunities are going to start arising, all of a sudden, maybe you get a, some kind of an opportunity at shadowing someone that you is from the field that you potentially want to explore. And by the way, it doesn't, you don't need to figure it out right away. You might try a few things and they're all going to fail. Just be patient. Just keep doing this. But at least you're exploring. Just the exploration itself is going to give you a new spark and zest to life. And then, undoubtedly, if you just keep doing this, reality wants to check that you're really serious about this. After a little while of seemingly barely any progress, it's almost like a rule. It's a rule in the game. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's gonna be something that's just gonna go like bum, like a giant thing will open up, and you'll be like, "Whoa, where did that come from?" Like you would meet somebody in a get together, and they were literally the CEO of the biggest company in that domain or whatever it is, and they're like, "Hey, I was looking for somebody to just kind of help me out a few hours a week. Is this something you'd be open to?" Just because they enjoyed the conversation with you or something. You wouldn't believe your luck. That wasn't luck. That was literally you opening these pathways, but you have to allow yourself to truly believe that it's possible. And I know it sounds so trite and self-helpy and all of that, but it's absolutely true. And you can play all kinds of games. If you do that thing that I described where you allow yourself to just sit and project yourself into the future and then say, deliver me there safely, and play these games with yourself, with how you imagine the future, and then acknowledge that you imagine the future accurately, even if it's mundane things, simple things. It opens a whole new window of interaction with reality, and that's kind of more on the exploratory side. But even in the most practical way, again, allocate that 1 hour where it's designed and it's there to reprogram yourself from nothing new under the sun, kid, to, hey, there might be something really interesting in my future. Let me check what it might be. That would be the first thing I would do from a practical standpoint. Allocate a 1 hour to help rewire your brain. Because without that, there's no way you're going anywhere. Oh, you're doing judo and wrestling? I didn't know that, Guru. That's really cool. Ghost is saying this is where self-realization and self-actualization paths, disciplines have a lot of value. Absolutely. We can't travel universe as long as we are divided in hundreds countries. Well, I don't know if that's true. You can still have countries for the sake of operation. Division is still very important. Pure unification also doesn't work. You need some rules. That's very clear. But the boundary of what that means and the interaction between countries is the product of how we view things. Absolutely. What's up, Daniel? And also the other Daniel. How are you, man? Um, yeah, people. Fun Danny Goller. Appreciate it, Daniel. Uh, it's something I don't really brag about, but in my opinion, martial arts is good for the soul. Absolutely, absolutely. It gives you, you know, what martial arts is really good at? Uh, Showing you that there's a fact to the matter. That is something that is lost on a lot of people. The reason that a lot of people that do martial arts seriously or semi-seriously are also pretty balanced is because they know there's right and wrong answers about things. When you enter a match, uh, into the boxing ring or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu arena or wrestling or whatever it is, there's right and wrong decisions you have to make. And you make too many wrong decisions in the wrong time, that means your ass. And that's very real because it also hurts. So you learn very quickly that there's a real answer to the situation. It's not just whatever you want it to be. And that gives you a very good grip on what is doable and not doable in the world. But also, it gives you the stamina and the understanding that you can actually overcome certain things, even if they look insurmountable at the moment. I would absolutely second that, Guru. Appreciate the kind words, Daniel. And no, it's not only if you plan to fight someone. Actually, if you plan to never fight anyone, that's the best thing to do, which is always know where the boundaries are. You know who are the people who get in fights the fastest? The ones that have no understanding that there's so much gradation between a conversation and violence. People who do this a lot because they spar, they understand that there's a whole range of stops before something has to become physical, right? So you're not worried. There's no worry there because you see all the stops. There's so many different situations. So just because somebody entered your space doesn't mean it has to get physical because you see so many moves that you can do to diffuse the situation. So you're not worried. People who don't know, they're very erratic. The second the temperature rises a little bit, they don't see these levels. They just think, oh, I better do something because they're scared. So they're very reactive and they can do something that is very foolish. Actually, people that do martial arts on a regular basis are a lot more calm because they see all these levels. For them, it's a pedal, it's not a button. It's not violence or not violence. It's how much violence, in what form. That's basically the main differences there. Rental place, start a mushroom business, have DoorDash for most of my income. There you go. Slowly you're moving there. What's up, Bad Daddy? Ebony, how you doing? Just now seeing you here. Watch Enigma of Success podcast. It was stellar stuff. Thanks, J. Paul. I appreciate you. Tech Travis saying, Dan, please respond to this. Yes, we do live in a simulation, but we are the creators of that simulation, so the universe can experience itself. I actually don't think so. But I think it's besides the point. I don't think we're the creators of the simulation. I don't know if that really plays that much of a role. If you feel that you find salvation in that proposition, by all means, I'm never going to take it away. But if you ask me about do I think that that's what's going on, I absolutely don't think that's what's going on. I think there's no reasons to think that that's the case. But the details of this, I don't have a dog in this fight. Like I don't have a reason to err on one side or the other, aside from the fact that I'm just exposed to too much information that tells me that that's not the case. So that is I know it's spoken in a very positive thrust, Freeman's. You're saying, no, Dan, we can't. Only that will prove to other UFO races that we are ready. Only united we can move further, or we will stay in a zoo. So I know it's spoken from like a beautiful place, but what is being missed here is that you are your own master. Nobody's coming to save you. The fact that there are other beings does not mean for 1 second that they're waiting for you to pass a test. What is important in the universe is responsibility in existence itself and carrying your own weight. You're not supposed to pass a test that somebody else put in front of you. You're supposed to overcome the hurdles of yourself in order to get to a state where you're self-sufficient and responsible adult species, just like it is with people. It's not about checking that you meet some kind of a bar. It's about coming to your own, becoming a responsible, self-sufficient civilization. That's what it's about. Or at least that's my position. And we have a responsibility in this. All right. I think that was a good hour. I think we'll slowly adjourn for today. Tomorrow will be Simulation Talk 300, man. So show up, come by tomorrow. Tomorrow is gonna be fun. If you want to follow me across platforms, it's Danny Goller on TikTok and Instagram. It's Goller Danny on X. It's Laser X83 on Twitch and Dango Thoughts on YouTube. And if you are on YouTube, please come join the membership program that gives you early access to all my content, access to my weekly lives for members only. One that we have tomorrow, actually. In these lives, they're for members only, and we dive much deeper into subjects because we can watch all kinds of things, look at things, and we're not limited by YouTube's algorithms from like not being able to show other channels because they demonetize. Because I don't monetize those, we can actually watch whatever we want. Well, still with some time restrictions, but a lot easier. And if you want to sign up from the second tier of the membership program, you will get an invite to Zoom calls with me once a month. Just make sure you email me to the email listed there if you sign up. If you can check out our website, codeofreality.com, in which we have the merch, the lasers, the protocols, and everything. I've added some merch on the channel as well of Code of Reality logos. I think they're pretty cool. So if you want to help the channel, please get yourself a mug or a hoodie or a shirt. And we'd love to see pictures of you guys with it. And please come join our Discord community of incredible individuals who are talking about this stuff. The link to which you can find in the main YouTube channel, on the third link from the top in the socials, and also in the link tree on TikTok. If you still want to donate to the film, feel free to do so. That will be received with gratitude. We're in post-production now, still receiving donations on GoFundMe pages. On the GoFundMe page, find the trailer for the movie The Discovery on Dango Thoughts on YouTube. Just go and punch in The Discovery. Under the trailer, in the description, you can find a GoFundMe page which you can donate. If you're a high roller and you're a baller and you will donate over $1,000, you would be in the group of people who would be the first ones on the planet to see the movie. Nobody will see the movie before these people. I think it's pretty cool. But of course, if you can afford this, don't worry. Of course, you're going to see the film. We're going to put it out to the public in some form or another. We're figuring this out as we speak. I want to acknowledge our incredible moderators, Ebony and Guru. Thank you so much. No matter what, no matter you're working, not working, you're always here, man. Like, I really appreciate you. Ebony has been with us forever. Really love you and appreciate you. And also Chris and Jessica, thank you so much for being our incredible moderators. And I want to acknowledge you, the audience, for always being here, participating, asking questions. Either you're old or a new listener. I really appreciate you. This would not be possible without you. Thank you so much, guys. Daniel, see you. Never Tools, see you. And everybody here on YouTube, I appreciate you guys. That's it. See you tomorrow at Simulation Talk 300. Remarkable. Peace and love, everyone. Good night. Ciao.